Okay, welcome back. The next thing we're going to tackle is the where clause. And the where clauses allow to thin out the number of lines that show up, only the things that are of particular interest to us. Okay, so for example, if I said, let's go back to this query. I'm going to get rid of the top guy. But I don't want all of those. I just want to have the ones where the department is called water sports. So here's a new clause called the where clause. Where, and then I'm going to say department equals water sports. All right, let's see if I made any typos. Ta-da! Okay, so the where clause thins out the list. It only provides you data on the ones that meet the criteria. Kind of sort of makes sense, right? Okay, so the equality operator here is pretty straightforward. Where it equals, but there's some others. Obviously there's going to be like a greater than or a less than. Those typically would be things with numbers. So I'm going to go to inventory and open this guy up. So where I have a bunch of quantity on hands and things like that, quantity on order, right? Okay, so quantity on hand, quantity on order. So I'm going to go back to this guy. Whoa. No, I don't want to make any changes. All right, here we go. So I'm going to say select asterisk from inventory. Actually, let's just do that first, okay? Okay, hey, look, I don't have my execute button. How do I get that back? Well, click on the tab and hit run. Okay, cool. Now I only want those where the quantity on hand is greater than 100. Okay, I just made that up. So I just say where quantity on hand is greater than, how about greater than or equal to 100? That sounds good. Let's try that. Doing. So now the list is a lot smaller. I only got 19 rows in my data. Okay. Now I'm not going to go through and just show them all because, greater than or less than or equal to, I mean, those are all work the same, right? Once you got the concept of one of them, it kind of makes sense. So one more time, is it case sensitive? Let me go back to, remember we talked about are the commands case sensitive. Let's go back to the one where I'm doing the inventory. Let's go back to SKU data. All right, asterisk from SKU data where department is equal to okay, is that going to work? I mean, we know that the command, that the select statement part is not case sensitive, and the from is not case sensitive, and the column names are not case sensitive, and the table names are not case sensitive. But how about the text? No. Practically nothing in SQL is case sensitive. Okay, that's weird, but it's okay. All right. So when I did a where clause, do I have to actually show the thing that I'm wearing against? Does that make any sense? All right, let me talk what I'm talking about. So here I have department. Can I just say buyer? In other words, the data being displayed to me, does that have to contain the thing that has the where clause? Nope. Nope. So the where clause is completely independent. This column could appear in the output or not. Your choice. Okay, good. All right. So I'm assuming that you kind of got the concept and can look at the book, particularly on figure 2.3, and see all of the operators. Equal to, not equal to. By the way, the not equal, you might be, depending on what programming language you grew up on, you might be using like the exclamation equals. Don't do that. This is the correct way for doing not equal to. So right now, I'm only worried about these guys. These down here we haven't got to yet, so don't panic. But the equal to, less than, greater than, etc., etc., etc. Okay? Good. All right, the next thing we're going to learn is on page 78, which is sorting. I want to sort the data in a particular row or something. All right? So I'm going to go back to my database, and let's go back to inventory guy. So I'm going to do select asterisk from inventory. All right, I'm going to run that guy. And now I want to sort it on quantity on order, okay? So here's how it's done. So we're going to learn, so we've learned select, from, where, and now we're learning something called order by. So it's 2 words, order by quantity on order. So it's the same data, same number of rows of output, 32. It's just that it's sorted in that particular order. And I can even, by the way, ascending order is kind of the default, but I could go in here and say order by something DESC for descending, and reverse the order. ASC would be ascending, but it's the default, so you rarely actually have to use that. But isn't that pretty cool? Okay, so now you know how to sort. Sorting on numeric makes plenty of sense, but I can sort on SKU description, right? It'll do it in alphabetical order, right? Because order by works. So I'm going to do SKU description, and it'll sort by that, right? Boom. So dive mask is the first thing that comes up. Okay, so the order of these clauses are important. You cannot put an order by before a where, as an example. So the order is important. So far we've learned in order, we've learned select, from, where, and order by. And all those go in exactly that order. Okay? Good. Later on, when we got all of the select clauses put together, we're going to learn a cool little mnemonic that makes it easy to remember this stuff. Okay, so there's more things you can do in a where clause. On page 81, they start talking about logical operators. Now, a logical operator would be where, like, for example, I say the quantity on hand is greater than 0, and the quantity on order is 0, something. Okay, so it's 2 parts to a thing. All right, so I'm going to go do that now. So here we go. So I'm going to do, and I'm going to put my where clause back in. Except this time I'm going to say quantity on hand is greater than 100, and quantity on order is equal to 0. Now, I don't even know if this is going to provide me any data. Yeah, it does. So quantity on hand is greater than 100, but there's not currently being ordered. None on order. Now, let's talk about or and for one more time, because this is kind of strange. So the English use of or and is kind of sort of slightly different than the way this works in the SQL world. If I walk up to the counter at McDonald's and said, I would like a hamburger and a Diet Coke, how many items am I going to get? I'm going to get 2 items, right? But if I said, I walk up to the counter and I said, I would like a Diet Coke or a Diet Pepsi, how many things am I going to get? I'm going to get 1 thing. So when you're standing at a McDonald's counter, and means you get more, and or means you get less. That is the exact opposite, because this is used inside of a where clause, and a where clause acts as a filter. So when you make the filter stronger, that means I get fewer rows. If I make the filter weaker, I get more rows that go through. So it's the exact opposite in SQL world. An and clause inside a where means I get less things, and an or inside a where clause, I get more things. Okay? I'm just saying it intuitively, it's kind of sort of backwards. Okay, good. All right. So this is kind of sort of important. You kind of sort of need to get this bit in your head. It's not a tough concept. But I want to show you something that's kind of weird. So I want to go back to this guy, and I want to do what's called a logical opposite of this. If somebody said, this is what I wanted, and I showed it to them, and they went, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I meant the exact opposite of that. Because that happens. Sometimes you work it out in your head thinking, okay, if it's greater than this, and then when you finally get to the answer, you go, Well, that ain't what I wanted. I wanted the exact opposite of that. So how do you turn this into the logical opposite? And first, it's actually not that difficult. Okay, right now here is a comparison operator, here is a logical operator, and here is another comparison operator. Okay, for a total of 3 operators. Follow along, please. There are 2 comparison operators and 1 logical operator for a total of 3 operators. Okay, we're going to make changes to 3 operators. Not 2, not 1, not 18. Because there's 3 operators here, we're going to make change to all 3 operators, okay? I'm gonna do it right underneath here. We're not going to be able to execute that, but here's how it would work. I'm going to say select asterisk from inventory where quantity on hand. So what is the opposite of greater than? If you told me less than, you'd be really, really close, but not exact. The opposite of greater than is less than or equal to. And you might go, what? Well, think about it. If I said greater than 5, and you said less than 5, well, what about 5 itself? So this would be less than or equal to 10. What's the opposite of and? What's or? And then quantity on order. And what's the opposite of equal? Not equal. That's the symbol for not equal. All right, this one I have to delete because I can't do comments here. I'm going to run this guy. Oh, man. I misspelled something. Quantity. My spelling is bad today. Yay! Okay, I got 24 lines here. The previous one, I don't remember how many it had. It was like 16 or something. So here's how you do a logical opposite. And yes, I am going to have this on the quiz. I'm going to give you a sample and say I want you to generate the logical opposite. It is not at all complicated. And goes to or goes to and, equal goes to not equal, less than goes to greater than or equal to, greater than is equal to, it goes to less than or equal to. It's very simple. There's 3 things that need to be converted. Okay, it ain't complicated, I promise you. Okay, so here is a handy summary of all the operators and their logical opposites. You might want to pause the video and write this down, or at least wait until the stuff shows up in lecture notes. So to continue on, there's on page 82, there's a thing called a list operator. I don't know, there really isn't a real name for this thing. They call it set of values, but that's a horrible term. I call it list because it kind of sort of makes more sense. Anyway, it's the in keyword, in, on page 82. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to whack some of this stuff. So I'm going to say from, let's do SKU data. And then I'm going to say where buyer in. And then in parentheses, I put the list of buyers I want, a list of things. Okay? If it's a string, I would have to put this in quotes, right? So I could say, Nancy Myers and Cindy Lowe. Okay, so let's take a minute and look at this. So buyer in a list, and so the list, if it's string, you're going to have to use strings. If it's numbers, you don't put quotes on the numbers part, right? So it only provided me that. So it's a sophisticated way. Now, this is not that much different than going in and saying where buyer equals and or buyer equals Cindy Lowe. The 2 are roughly the same, except this technique is going to come in a little bit handier later on when we learn how to do compound SQL statements where one statement feeds another. Okay, so the in statement, okay, is used to produce a list. So a list operator in my world is called in. You do need to know the data type of buyer in order to make this thing work. For example, if it's a zip code, do I know the zip code is an integer or a zip code a string? It could be either way. So you're going to have to know. You're going to have to go look. Okay, we're coming up to the 15-minute mark, so you guys got this down.